it comes to live drums, I use this kit by Jake Reed, where he basically samples a live drum kit for you, and he's sampling one shots for you that you can, you know, use. He's got hi-hat one shots, he's got kick one shots, he's got snare one shots, and I mean, he has 3 different kits right here, 3 different sounds. You literally have a full drum kit, full drum set, I meant, in FL Studios, because I don't have access to a drum kit, you don't have access to a drum kit. I can't play the drums, but I know what they sound like, so if I have the one shots, I can easily make them. So I use this 90% of the time when it comes to live drums. And this is actually a vintage drum kit I was working on, because when it comes to drums, I'm really inspired by Tame Impala, I'm inspired by Kanye, I'm inspired by Tyler, especially when it comes to vintage drums, because Kanye, I mean, he's really known for chopping up vintage drum samples and, you know, using them in a lot of his beats. So if you take, you know, a sound like this, for example, that I made, obviously I took a little bit of processing and just knowing what vintage drums sound like to kind of get an idea of what I want to make. This is completely out of one shots. I mean, obviously it's not going to sound exactly like they're sampled live, because they're not. I'm on FL Studios. But actually, I want to make a drum loop right now, so I'm actually going to pick this Greasy B kit, and I'm just going to make a Kanye style drum loop. The one thing I think when it comes to vintage drums is the hi-hat. And the hi-hat can be tricky sometimes because you don't want it to sound crazy or artificial, but you also don't want it to sound like kind of boring and just not really fast paced, because I think that's really what makes vintage drums, is when they're fast paced. I like to work anywhere between 170 to 180 BPM. And with the metronome, this is how fast it's going to be. And then all I do is just lay down a simple 2-step hi-hat pattern. And at first that kind of doesn't really, it sounds like a one shot. You can definitely tell it's a one shot. So what I like about these one shots is that they fade out for a while. So what I do is I take the out and I cut it out about 50%. This way they cut out a little bit. Then I go here into the velocity tab and I adjust the velocities, sounding a little bit better of what I want it to sound like. Honestly, you could take down the velocity even more, kind of play around with it, adjust it, because you gotta think about it, if you're playing a hi-hat in real life, you're not going to be playing the same sound, the same volume every single time. So you want to imitate that on FL Studios by adjusting the velocity. And I'm happy with that for now, so I'm going to add the kick, like that kick right there. I'm going to take the out, I'm going to leave it right there, and I'm just going to add just simple kick pattern. Next, time for a snare. Snare is just going to be on the 3 and the 7, something simple. And actually, when you have the snare, you can kind of adjust the kick pattern. Obviously, you want it to sound more realistic. If I add a kick pattern that sounds like this, you know, you can't play that in real life unless you're Sonic on the damn drums or something, you know what I mean? You want it to sound realistic. I would say this is the fastest kick pattern I would do that sounds realistic, that sounds like it could be played. So I would stick with actually a kick pattern probably like this. And then next is actually the open hat. I love open hats. So this is a completely open hi-hat, and what I'm gonna do to get it sound like an open hat, I'm gonna go in the envelope settings. I'm gonna turn the hold all the way up, turn down everything else down to 0 except the release. I'm gonna put like 15 to 20%, and then name this open hat real quick. I'm actually gonna have a hi-hat with the foot too, because on a real drum kit, I'm pretty sure there's a pedal for the hi-hat. So I'm kind of imitating that, you know, when you hit that pedal, what it's gonna sound like right before the open hat. So, and let me just see where I want the hi-hat to be. And also, when you turn that hold up, it's only gonna play for as long as you have the note going for it. For example, if I have it going this long, it's gonna play that long, but if I have it going only this length, it's only gonna play that length. I think the open hat sounds good right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a hi-hat pedal right before that. As you can see, it complements it and make it seem more realistic, like you're actually stepping on the pedal in real life and closing the hi-hat. Because without it, this is what it's gonna sound like. It still sounds good, but I just think it adds a little more character to it. And sounds like it's more real. And that's what's so amazing about this drum kit right here, this one-shot kit, is because, I mean, you literally have everything from a real drum kit and you're just using it to make drums. So there's really no excuse for, I don't have a drum kit, I don't have this. There's things on the internet that you can get and that makes it easy for you to play live sounding drums. So what I'm gonna do next, I'm gonna balance this to audio, as you see right here. I'm just gonna turn the volume up there. And I turn the volume up kind of to where it only matches the top of this. I don't really know how to describe it, but I'll just turn it up a little bit. I like how that sounds. In a sense, you could tell it's not lively recorded, you know, microphone setup and stuff. It sounds real enough to me, and it sounds good enough to me where I'm gonna use it. And also, you gotta think about you're able to sample it too. You could chop this up and make it sound good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put that on the mixer track next, and I'm gonna EQ out just some of the really low ends. I always do this for everything, for every one of my beats. Around 0 to 40 hertz is where you get muddiness. So I cut out, you know, a little chunk of that in every single one of my drums. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna add a high pass filter around, I wanna say 12,000 hertz. I'll say more like 13,000 hertz. Kind of cut out some of the super high end. Because if you hear a lot of vintage drum breaks like from the 80s and stuff, they do sound a little bit muffled. And what you could do, and to imitate that, what I do is I cut out some of the low end and then I cut out some of the super high end. And next what I'm going to do is actually this free plugin called Vinyl, where you can literally select the year. Like for example, we're making like 1980s style drums. And I have my preset right here that I made. You can save it as a preset. And I use this for my drums and it gives it kind of record sound. You can kind of hear it giving it that grain, that record sounding effect. I don't even know what you call it, but with that, this is what it's gonna sound like. Turn this down a little bit, and then honestly I personally want to add a little bit of reverb. I'm gonna do room reverb because I'm gonna act like this was sampled in a room. Turn down the mix on it. And honestly, that sounds good to me. So compared to what we started with, what we ended with, that to me sounds pretty vintage. It sounds like something Kanye would use. It sounds like something Tyler would sample. And that's honestly the goal I was going for. Obviously, I bought this kit right here by Jake Reed, but everything else that I'm using besides this reverb plugin, but you can literally just use Fruity Reverb, the exact same thing. All you have to do is probably just turn up the size on it. That way it can sound more open, sound like it's in a room. Besides that, Vinyl, this is free. This is a free plugin. I forgot who made it, I'm gonna be honest. This is a free plugin though. This is a free FL Studio stock plugin. So I mean, I bought the drum kit for the one shots, and other than that, basically everything else you can substitute and use free plugins to sound like a vintage drum kit. And yeah, so this is literally gonna be the final drums.